Okay, welcome everyone. Hi, happy Saturday. So if you're here for the first time, hello, welcome. My name's Eva Lee, and I'm here with Awesome Careers, where we feature a podcast called Meet the Pros, where we connect with professionals from different parts of their experiences and have them come on to share about what they do, what they love, what they find challenging. And today I have with me is a really good, wonderful person, Manlia Xiong, who's going to talk about her experience in working as an information competency librarian, which is not a very traditional occupation that many people are familiar with. And so today I wanted to feature that. Really quick, if you are tuning in, you can also watch us on YouTube. You get the HD experience, whereas Facebook trims it down a little bit to 720 or 760, so it might not be as clear. So just to give you a heads up. And for folks who don't know what an information competency librarian does, Malia has been working as in this profession for 14 years. For more than 40 years, actually. And she has half of those years are spent working in her current profession at the College of Sequoias in Visalia. And as a librarian, she helps supervise library activities at the center locations in Tulare and Hanford. In addition, she provides library instructions, develops and teach library and information courses, assists students and faculty with information needs, select print and non-print materials for the library collections, serve on campus committees, and so much more. And something she wanted to share was that librarians, of color make up a small portion of the library information professionals. It is a rewarding job to both help students, faculty, and sometimes administrators. Librarians are informational gatekeepers. Libraries are portals to the world's knowledge. And so that's a little glimpse about what we're going to jump in more in detail about. So thank you all for joining us. And again, let me know if you're tuning in, what city. I always want to get an idea of who's watching this, whether you are here on the live stream or again, watching us on the replay. So really quick, Jovina's here. Hi, Jovina. Welcome from Sacramento. And then, of course, Kia here is watching from Fresno. Welcome, Kia. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate that. Okay, without further ado, there's a lot of questions we're going to jump right into. And then we're going to bring in Malia. Hi, Malia. How are you feeling?
I'm good. Thank you, Eva. And I have to apologize in advance because your name is very close to my grandniece's name, which is my daughter's name. Her name is Ava. So I do apologize in advance if I mention you, if I address you by Ava instead of Eva. So
it's okay.
Just know
all the time too. And I was telling Malia, right? I was saying, I kept getting your name wrong too, because I have these two colleagues they prefer Manila, which is again part of the Philippines. And so I always get that mixed up. And I want to make sure that people know that for yours, the N is silent. So it's Malia, right?
Yes, the N is silent. And I have to always address that to people when they're trying to pronounce my name because they include the N. They say the N in my name, but that's okay. But yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Eva, for inviting me tonight to talk about my career with all of you. Again, my name is Manlia Xiong, and I am a information competency librarian with the College of Sequoias, located in Visalia, California. Our main campus is in Visalia, but our college district do have two center locations, one in Hanford and one in Tulare, and I serve as the travel librarian between those two centers. So I spent physically, if we're working face-to-face, I spent my days throughout the week 2 days in Hanford and 2 days in Tulare. And on days that I'm not there, we have our adjunct librarians who are there to assist students, faculty, and staff and administrators. Mm-hmm. As Eva mentioned, I provide library and information competency instructions to classes. But due to the pandemic, all of our library instructions are done online via Zoom or whatever platforms that instructors are teaching their classes. But right now, most of our instructions are done in Canvas via Zoom. During these instructions, I provide information and assist students and instructors on how to use or incorporate library resources and services in their learning and teaching. In addition, I assist at our reference desk, or what we recently have renamed our reference desk to Ask the Librarian desk, um, to help answer any questions that comes in from students, staff, faculty, administrators, and community users. So, there's a range of questions that may come in, from research questions to technical questions to directional questions. Furthermore, I participate in our campus governance committees. So this year I'm in 3 campus committees, or general education committees that oversees our general education courses. I'm in our outcomes and assessment committee, as well as our budget committee for the district. Um, Not only that, too, I also do course development and collection development, selecting materials for purchase, as well for the library. So that's just a bit of what I do as my role as an information competency librarian.
That's really great. Thank you so much. That covers a lot, and then we're going to digest some of those pieces a little bit more further. So I want to also quickly catch. Jovina's is like, yes, it's hi. Hi, Jovina. And of course, Linda's like, yes, thank you for Clara. I initially thought it was Manila as well. And then Manlia. And now I now know, I think it's neither.
Yes, Linda. So yes, Manlia. So the N is silent in my name.
Okay.
And hi, Davina.
Okay, so you mentioned really this part, which is, again, like what you do, how did you get started, right? What you do for your role, right? And you really broke it down to like a lot of the things, like oftentimes assisting, helping folks, get information essentially, working on like selecting, certain things to add to the collection to the library. So there's a lot, it sounds like a good time of your work is split between customer service, right?
Yes.
And then of course, administrative stuff.
Yes. And so there's a lot of misconception when, people think about librarians, that we sit behind the desk all day. That's most of my, job is, most of the time, I'm found behind the desk, or at the librarian desk, or if not in my office. Or that we, read books all day, or that we love books in order to become librarians. And so, those are just the misconception. But there's a lot of, like I always tell students, there's a lot of back office work that we do that normally, people don't see. While we're sitting behind the desk, we're probably, working on one of the numerous, projects that, I am responsible for, part of the team for my department. Whether if it's reviewing a policy, or reviewing a policy that we have in place, and reviewing within that policy, reviewing, the procedure, is it working, is it not working? Or behind that desk, I might be, emailing and communicating with instructors, with faculty, for, my next library instruction, my next presentation in his or her class, just making sure that if any instructor had invited me to present in their class, that, I'm well prepared, that I know when I'm go to the class what the teacher wants me to teach their students. And that's, navigating to our library website, navigating and knowing how to use the library resources, the online databases, the online library catalog, knowing where to look for books, to look for articles, peer review articles. And sometimes, we really, when it comes down to our library instructions and presentation, we really customize our presentation to meet what the instructor wants their students to learn from our presentation. And a lot of times, it could be a one-shot presentation, or sometimes, we are embedded, librarians are embedded. We are embedded in a course where we stay with the instructor in this particular course, or several of, if he teaches different, multiple sessions of the same course, we are embedded in multiple session of the course. And so we are, the go-to person when it comes to researching, when it comes to navigating online, gathering sources to support their presentation, to support their research, to support their argument. And so, that can be one thing as to why we're, sitting behind the desk, and the other reasons is, students come and use the library. That's usually the main hub of the campus, to find a quiet space to, do the work, to check their email. And, we get technical questions like, this is my first time, being in the library. So really, we are like the face of the library that they first see when they come inside the library. And a lot of times, we try to explain to faculty, to instructors, and even sometimes administrators that, it takes a lot of courage for students to come into the library, to use that space, or to even come up to us and ask for help, not because of they might have a previous, negative experience before of a librarian shushing them, or, just
I think we all experienced that before.
right. Or just that, anxiety that they had, like, coming into the building, like, of like knowledge, and I don't know where to start. And, you just have to really, applaud students and really try to break down that barrier and make it as welcoming as possible for students, especially for students who, take up that courage, that first step to come to you and approach you. Because a lot of times, and I need to do better too with my position. Sometimes at the desk, I don't know students when they're struggling. And sometimes I do, where, I look up or I walk my rounds around the library and I check and I make small talks, and I notice that, they are having difficulties. And so I will approach them. But sometimes, a lot of times, I don't do that. And so, I appreciate students coming to us like, I need help. I have no idea where to start. And so, so just sharing, to you guys, that's just a little bit of what we do, more than just sitting behind the desk. It's a lot of back office work, a lot of emotional, and sometimes, it can be very draining, and it could also be at the same time very rewarding as well too.
And we'll jump a little bit about that in a bit, but I want to quickly throw in Linda's comments about, I appreciate librarians so much. Our school librarian is often perceived by students as someone who's checking in and checking out books, right? But wow, he does so much more than that. Yes. He is an expert researcher who can easily find all the resources to help me and my students. I can't imagine what you do at a college level.
Yes, and Linda, thank you so much. Oftentimes, school librarians, I, was a K to 12 librarian before, and I really appreciate when instructor really uses the library and really show their students, bring their classes in, bring their students in, and say, this is the library, this is the space, and, really utilize the library.
Absolutely. Perfect. Now we're going to jump into a little deeper. How did you find your passion? How did you know this was going to be your career path? You've been doing for 14 years at least. How did you know this was going to be the one to start with? This is going to, like, what was your calling?
Being a librarian was actually not my first calling. I really wanted, as a young child, growing up, I really wanted to be a teacher because I had such amazing teachers growing up within my K-12 education. So I wanted to be a teacher, an educator. And I think it's still, being a librarian as my position, I think that, still works because I am working in a college, community college. But finding my passion and my purpose was largely impacted by the first Hmong and color librarian that I met at Fresno State. Her name is Vane Vane, and she still works there as a librarian. I met Vane when I started my first job as a part-time student assistant with the reference department inside Fresno State's Henry Madden Library. And I was astonished that there were another librarian who looked like me,
That's awesome.
who looked like me because I shared this briefly with you before live, just recalling back the school librarians I had in grade schools, middle school and high school. They were white, middle-aged or older ladies. But seeing someone of a different color who looks like me was just really awesome. And, when I met Vane, it was just that, she knew who I was without having a word with her, because I knew her that, she was Hmong. She understand me, where I came from. And just having that connection, that relationship, was just awesome. And, really, thanks to Vane and for her guidance, she spoke to me about higher education and really encouraged me to explore the field of library science. No? Mm-hmm. And so after graduating at Fresno State, I worked as a library assistant at a high school. And it was then I realized that I really enjoy helping and teaching students and teachers to navigate and use the library and its resources. And so I pursued a graduate school. I applied and got into San Jose State University's library and information science program. So that's how I got started, just that, motivation and guidance from Vane.
So there is the formal training, right? The master's program. Yes. I think people may not realize it. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really good.
Yes. And so, yes, you do have to have a master's degree in library science to work, a degree in library science, or a credential, teaching credential, whether it's single subject, multiple subject, but a credential in a higher education master degree in library information science to become a teacher librarian, to become a district librarian, to become an academic librarian.
Great. Wonderful. Good tip there, folks. All right. Now we're going to get to some little fun thing. How about your family? Describe what you do for a living. Do they understand what you do?
My siblings, my in-laws, they understand what I do for a living. However, for my parents and for my father-in-law, they don't, or at least I think my dad does a little bit, because he was in school janitorial, and so he knows. He's been in that environment, so he probably knows a little bit of what I do. My parents, my father-in-law, understand that I work in a college, but to specifically tell them what I do or my title, they may not understand. But the closest that I could really explain to my parents what I do is I'm a researcher and also a teacher. And so I think that's the closest that I could, tell my parents that, hey, I'm a researcher and I also am a teacher and I work at a community college.
Mm-hmm. So they have some understanding there about, again, the population you serve and the nature of the work, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you love? What do you love about your job?
What do I love? There's a lot of things that I, love about my job. And I think it has to do with being around with the students, being around with the faculty, the instructors, and just helping them, teaching them, guiding them how to use to how to use the information that is available to them at our district, specifically in the library, um, and really showing them how to get there, guiding them to those information resources, and how to find credible resources, how to evaluate. So really, I think whenever I get a research question, other than technical questions or directional questions or sometimes behavioral questions, I jump to my feet. I crave that research purposes. I love, guiding and teaching students along the way, and faculty instructors as well too, how to get there, that these are the available resources that we have, that so the library spend an amount of money for, and not knowing how to use it is really sad. But whenever I get that chance to really teach someone and guide them in how to use these resources, uh, that's what I love about my job, what I do.
Fantastic. And I think people don't realize that too. Oftentimes, if you're a student, you're paying tuition. This is a service. This is a
Yes,
service you're
it's a
paying
free.
for. Just like
Yes,
gym, just like everything else on campus.
exactly. It's a free service, and sometimes I get questions from students where I and they you can't blame them. You can't blame students at all, because they come to me, or sometimes I get a question where they say, well, I went to the open web. I just opened up my web browser. I did a Google search, and that's typically normally the questions, the response that we get from students is that I did a Google search and this is what I found. But I really want this article, but this article is not free, or it does not provide the full text article. And it really supports my argument. And I'm coming to you. I need, will you be able to help me find the full text article? And so a lot of times, with some students, they could provide us with the citation, or sometimes they cannot, and they can just say, oh, it's by this author and this is the title. And so that's where, that's one thing about, I tell students, like, great, as long as you can just provide me the title or the author, or if you know what the article was about, or if you can share, the citation or just the abstract with me, we can really dive down and let me work my magic. And sometimes I could provide them, where I'm able to locate the full text. And so if I'm able to locate the full text article that they need within our online resources, such as our databases, then I tell them that, hey, we have these, really awesome resources online available to you that you don't have to pay, but let me guide you to our academic databases and let me tell you how to use these databases and which databases to use to find this article in. And so, it kind of provides me with the opportunity to also teach the students that, we have these available resources. You can use these available resources rather than going to the open web, doing a Google search. Nothing bad about doing a Google search, but start with what's available to you.
Right. So again, so that way you don't have to pay it again. I mean, I tell folks, and you want to get, like, I mean, when you're researching, right, you want to, essentially what you're doing is you're teaching them the tools of how to utilize this service online, how to navigate to get primary resources, right? So that way they can be great authors and writers and make those really cool arguments in their essays or in their research. That sounds really good. Okay, next one. What do you find challenging? What is the biggest challenge when you go to work and you're like, oh, I got to do this?
I think, that comes back to teaching the students how to get to those resources. And, you can't blame students when they come to me that, hey, this is where I went. Because they were never taught, and maybe they were taught, but they didn't remember. So just basically emphasizing the importance of information literacy and pretty much, the role that I play. So just talking a little bit about information literacy, That includes the ability to identify, to find, to evaluate, and use information effectively. And I always tell students that, when you're researching, it is a process. And it's true what sometimes your instructors say, never, procrastinate when you are given a research paper or you're preparing for a presentation or debate. And so, um, information contains all that. It also contains from effective search strategies to evaluation techniques. Students learn how to evaluate the quality and credibility and validability of websites and to also give proper citation. And so when students or instructors come to me or I visit their classes, I assist and share with them things that I can do and help them with. And sometimes with some classes, visits or reference transactions that I have with students are successful, and sometimes it is not. And when it becomes successful, it's easier to maintain and nurture that relationship that you have with students and with instructors. But when when it's not successful, especially with instructors, you find yourself, and this is the challenging part, you find yourself to follow up with them and asking them, letting them know, by sending emails, promotional materials, information, resources, and also by visiting them in their office and reminding them that the importance of information literacy, that this is what I can provide for your students. It could really cut the research process for your students in half, that this is my responsibility, my role as a librarian to help you, instead of seeing me as an enemy, see me as an ally, and in ways that I can support your students. And so I think that's the challenging part is always following up on faculty, and making sure, when I'm working with students, that I'm always checking for understanding, making sure that, they understand how to navigate, how to use these resources and how to get there. And so that's some of the challenges. But I never stop. I never give up on students. And oftentimes, when students come to me, they ask, one question. Some students have replied back to me like, "This is like, overwhelming. You have provided me with so much information. I was just hoping for just one simple answer, but you have provided me with just X amount of answers that I am comfortable to start on my paper or my presentation."
Mm-hmm.
I have enough information. And so when I hear those kind of responses back, it's very rewarding that
Right,
I
because
have.
now you're checking, like, there's a competency level where it's like, okay, we got them to do one thing, right, or two things, and they're able to do it on their own. So that's really good. And yes, I think what you're saying is it can be challenging, right? Because you're like, I hope they understand. I hope they got it, right? So this huge pot of like, I hope, I hope I did all of this, and I hope they achieved, again, some learning outcomes out of it.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, and when I hear back from students that, yes, um, it was just a simple question, a simple answer I was hoping to get, but you provided me with all these abundance of information and resources that I feel confident to begin, and I know where to go, because in my responses back to students, a lot of times, if it's a research question that's going to take me longer to answer, to provide response to students, I always let them know, and I'm upfront with them and say that, hey, I won't be able to answer your question and provide you with a simple answer right away. But if you can give me a few minutes, like 30 minutes to 45 minutes with an email that I can, email you back, I can do a better job. And I know I can do a better job. And
That's
so,
so good. That's good. All right. We have a few comments, but I'm going to just quickly jump right in really quick. So Jennifer did, my librarian did a Zoom tutorial on how to use our online library to get research materials that were peer reviewed and also went over citations with us. It was so valuable and definitely helped me in my MBA program. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing
yes,
that. And
thank
then
you.
Ying quickly mentioned Google search is not research. That's so
Yes,
true. Google
yes,
search can be very dangerous too. So that's why it's so good to check for, again, primary resources. And if you're not sure, the librarian's going to be a good person to connect with about that.
exactly,
All right,
exactly.
we're going to jump into, we have a few more questions. Keep them coming, folks. All right. Now, I know you alluded to this earlier, but if you can re-emphasize, what are the primary skills you use in your job? How did you develop those skills? So, for example, earlier you mentioned like a good chunk of your time is teaching students, right? Teaching faculty how to navigate these tools. So, teaching as a skill set. And then you also mentioned like communicating, right? Sometimes in that situation where it's like, oh, I have to follow up with this faculty, right? Or I have to follow up with these classes, and it requires some skill set behind that. How did you build that? Or essentially, what are the primary skills you have to do and develop and execute in your work?
I think that really comes down to just experiences that you have beforehand. And, I think, due to my experiences working as a student assistant at the Fresno State Library, Henry Mandarin Library, as a school librarian, and also in graduate school, in my graduate program, um, those skills were also taught. And not only that too, but just being in that specific environment and immersing yourself in that profession, in that career. For example, my career, as a information uh, librarian, I had to really understand the community that I served, the students that I served. I had to really understand my department, the programs that we had, the policies and procedures that we have in place, our library systems, or the information resources that we have available, and just really taking the time to learn about them. And then not only learning, but that learning is just, a small part, but also using those resources is also very important. Um, you know, um, I talked about, being at the desk, having that customer service.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, obviously you're serving a, uh, a community of students, of scholars, instructors and faculty, and you want to provide a welcoming environment. As I talk about breaking down that barrier, making students feeling welcome when they come to you, come to use that space, that they're comfortable to come and approach you and talk to you about it. And um, oftentimes, those skills you just have to develop over the years. And, you have to really, question yourself, why am I here? What is my purpose? And so when you really immerse yourself into your career, start developing these skills. And, I think, having uh, a wonderful group of colleagues that you work with also really influence those skill sets that you build too, because you also uh, learn from them as well too. And they are like your mentors. You ask them, can you invite them to your instruction session? Say, can you evaluate me in my instruction session that I can improve on? And so I think everything, you really just really need to immerse yourself into your career and ask why you're there.
That's so good. And absolutely, you talked a lot about like the skill set, right? Like customer service, that being able to understand your clients, the customers you're serving. And I think Linda just quickly commented on that. I couldn't agree more. When serving a community of diverse individuals, it's important to know and understand them to be able to meet their needs.
Right.
Absolutely. That's so critical. And then you mentioned, of course, like that teaching part, the administrative stuff you have to do behind the scenes. I mean, when you were replying back to that student saying, give me that extra time, that's you, again, customer service all over again. Absolutely. And technically, folks, any position when you work with people is customer service.
Yes, yes.
Any position where you're working with, unless you're working in plants, so that's a little different, but we'll talk about that in the day. All right, great. We're going to jump now into a little fun one. If there were world problems that you could solve, what would it be, right? And how would you go about doing so? Again, you got all this magic wand, or you got this funding, right? Let's just say you were one of that person who won the, jackpot last night. We won't talk about it, but if you were able to solve this world problem, what would it be? What would Malia spend her energy and time solving?
This was actually a very tough question, surprisingly. And I really thought about it that, if there is a world problem that I could solve, it'll be climate change.
Climate change.
Climate
Nice.
change. Because, when I really think about it, Earth is just so important to us and our existence as to why we're here. And so it's important that we take care of it. And some of the things that I would do if I could solve or minimize climate change is by providing every home with renewable energy, such as energy efficient appliances, reduce water waste, consume more greens, even though, I'm a carnivore, so I love meat. And provide, everyone with just a fuel efficient car, eliminate plastic, bike, walk more, who doesn't love walking, and plant more trees, plant more trees. I think, we can never have too many trees out there. And so I think if I could, if that's one world problem that I can solve, it'll be climate change.
That's fantastic. And folks, I encourage you to think about what is a world problem you would love to solve and what are you doing to get there, right? Great. Okay. Now, another fun one. If you could turn back time, all of a sudden you get this power to go back to this 18-year-old you, fresh from high school. What would you tell her?
It's funny. I saw this question that you provided beforehand, and it was also a really, tough question, even though it should be a very simple question, because I was just thinking back to when, what was I doing when I was 18? When I was 18, what was I doing? And, my birthday is in July, so it's obviously in the summer.
Summer baby, yeah.
Yeah, I was a summer baby, and I graduated, as a 17-year-old, and, that transition into college as a freshman. And if, I, would really tell myself, my 18-year-old, that, hey, everything will be okay. You'll do good. You'll do good. Everything will be okay. Trust yourself, trust yourself. Trust the, trials and tribulations that you will face. Never be so hard on yourself. I think that's the hardest thing that, for any of us is we're always very hard on ourselves. And I think that will be, some of the things that I will tell my 18-year-old is, trust yourself, trust the path that you're going to, go into, that you're about to embark. You will do well, and don't undersell yourself, and just trust yourself, and you will get through all those trials and errors and tribulations that you will encounter. But you will do well. You will be okay, and you will be married to a wonderful guy, and you will have 3 boys, and they will drive you crazy, and they will also remind you to be grounded as well too. And so that's what I will tell myself.
That's so good. And I think I absolutely agree. I think a lot of folks, no matter where they are in their profession, we tend to be our worst critics.
Yes.
We hold ourselves so strong and accountable for it that we can't give ourselves sort of this acknowledgement to even try. Right. And so absolutely, it's so important that, just trust in yourself. I tell folks all the time, what's the worst that would happen if you just tried? Right. If you just went out and tried it, applied for the job, right, spoke to someone, whatever the case may be, if you just tried. So absolutely, that's so important. Like trust in yourself. Don't, sell yourself short. You are worth it. Absolutely. Okay.
Yes.
Next one, we're going to jump right into it. If you're not working in this role, you weren't a librarian, what would you be doing? And of course, don't think about the money needed, the education required, or what your family or husband will say. What would you be doing? What would be the other career that you will be pursuing?
Oh my goodness, this is such a fun question. When I was younger, as a teenager, I loved to Hmong dance. And when I was a young adult, I taught a few groups of Hmong dancers. And so if I wasn't working as my role as an information competency librarian, I would explore in becoming a professional ballroom dancer.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yes, yes. And I just love that. I remember, in college, I took, I believe, 2 or 3 ballroom dances, foxtrots, the waltz, the
Oh, nice.
merengue, and it was just like, wow, I really enjoy this. And you know, if it was something that if money and you know just like an inspiration, I think I would have really explored that career, becoming a ballroom dancer. And if
Like
I
professionally or as an instructor, because there's two different,
professionally, I think professionally as for first, and then maybe later on as an instructor to teach younger children who might be interested in becoming a professional ballroom dancer. And I think I could still I think I could still do it, and explore that too. But I think, I have to really convince my husband to be my dance partner. And I think I might have a difficult time in convincing him to be my dance partner.
To be the model, right? To be the model.
Right.
So, and the reason why I always ask everyone this is because, in our lifetime, we're going to have multiple careers. And it's because the great thing is we're living longer. The outcome of our age is, used to be predicted at 65. But we see that, after that, people actually end up going to the second, third, and fourth career. So, Malia, you could be doing this absolutely later on down the road. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, we need more dancers.
Yes, yes. And we might even have another interview about, how did I get started about being a ballroom dancer?
Yeah, I think I have a colleague who he teaches ballroom dancing too, but like daytime he's like a academic advisor, but nighttime he does ballroom dancing, and it's just the oddest thing. You never think he would be, but it's because I think he was like similar to you were talking, like that experience of being in the ballroom of like dancing and just he does teaching, so not the professional competing type, but just teaching people how to move, how to relax. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think that's really cool when you have, you see yourself potentially doing something else. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll revisit this a little bit later on. Okay. Now, and I know you had talked a little bit about this. So, and I always ask everyone this, as a person of color, have you experienced challenges in the workplace because of your race, ethnicity, either language, gender, age, or other types of barriers? And I know that you mentioned, like, in this profession, predominantly, it has been occupied by, white women as librarians. What are some of the challenges you either may have faced it, or if you haven't faced it any, how would you encourage someone to process or go about it?
Yeah, and I thank you for asking this question because it's such a good question. And yes, I did. And this event happened when I was, warming up my lunch in our staff lounge at work. And while I was there, waiting for my food to be ready, walks in a older white male instructor who needed to use the microwave as well
Mm-hmm.
too. And so while we were in the room together, we began small talks. And during our conversation, he mentioned to me that my English was very good, and asked me where I was from, where I was born, where I was raised. And when he asked me that, I tried very hard not to show my shocked expression on my face.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember my response to him was, I'm from Fresno, and I was born and raised uh, in Fresno all my life. And he was, it was and I remember he was taken back that I was born and raised in Fresno, lived here all my life. And I recall just after that uncomfortable, question, um, thanking him for noticing my good English, nah?
Mm-hmm.
And I also went on and I shared with him that I was a librarian at the district, working there. And this happened at one of the centers that I was working at. And I offer, what I do, I offer my help, and I, let him know that if he ever needed me to come in and to present to his class about the library, about our resources and information, or if he wants to send his students to me, to the library, to come and meet with me one-on-one to schedule an appointment, I will be glad to help him, to help his students. And so, I think I really took the experience that I had, just that brief transaction that I had with the instructor, with grace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also made it very clear to him that even though unintentionally he made it feel like I don't belong here, or that I wasn't from around here, that I wasn't born and raised
Mm-hmm.
here, um, that I belonged here as much as he belongs here as well too. And so, maybe it was unintentional on his part, but that was one of the many events that whenever I come across with a person who's not a minority, like, where are you from? Were you born and raised here? Or Malia, what type of name is that? Or, do you know the history of your name? I'm like, I do not know the history of my name. And I've come to research that. I come to realize, like, why are people so interested in my name? And then, and that posed the question as to, I'm curious about my name too. And so I finally asked, my parents, I finally asked my mom, and, my mom's like, well, I don't know if it was typical back then when our mom had us, but my mom said, my nurse, the nurse that, helped me in the delivery room was named Malia. So I just named you after, my delivery nurse. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so whenever people ask me how,
So
my name came about, I always kind of, share with them, how I got my name.
yeah. You're gonna laugh. My mom did the same exact thing with my sister Barbara. So my parents, I wasn't born here in the U.S. I was actually born at one of the refugee camps in Thailand, and so I was only born a few months. My parents brought me, and and then a year later, my parents had or maybe a year and a half or 2 years later, had my sister Barbara. And, it's the first time being in an American hospital. And of course, my parents, don't speak English. So literally, they looked into the nurse who was helping my mom, like, what's her name? And she looked so helpful. And at that time, and her name was Barbara, and she was the nurse. And so that's how my sister's name is Barbara, which is, again, like so much more, like if you hear Barbara, right? And then that time was like Barbara Bush, very popular there, which is the president's wife. And so it was just, that's so hilarious about this. The nurses, your names are very special.
Yes, you are.
That's so cool. It's like one of the funnest. I'm like, but you're exactly as you're telling me. I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, that's exactly like Barbara's story. So that's awesome. Okay. We're winding down to the last few minutes. Oh my gosh. An hour goes by so fast. Okay. Last one here. What are 2 career tips that, you would like to give out to people who are looking for opportunities right now, whether it is, one day becoming a librarian, or who's, in that 18 moment experience or 24 experience age where it's like, what do I do next? How am I going to like jump forward?
Right. And so my 2 words of, advice for job seekers, career seekers is, understand why your job is this, whether if you're seeking or whether if you're already in your job or career ready, because your job is this for a simple reasons that to solve problems, to help within your area of expertise. And so when you are aware of it, or when you take the time to really digest and question yourself, and are aware of it as to why you're there, you'll become more engaged with your work, in executing everything that you do with the intent of doing it well, within your area of responsibility. And my second advice to job seekers, or whether if you're already in the career ready, is build that relationship with your colleagues, with your boss, with your stakeholders who you're working with. Um, and I specifically mentioned your boss because he or she are the ones that is overseeing you. And, when you build that relationship and you have that relationship built, nurture it, maintain it. And because there will come a time and a place where, you will ask for guidance about what new skills that you can learn, how to improve on your existing skills. Because, when I was younger, I always thought that, hey, I have to wait until my evaluation to hear back on, what I can improve. But you don't have to wait until your evaluation. You don't have to wait for your evaluation to ask your boss on, what are some of the skills that I can learn, that I can improve on. And, let me tell you, your boss will be very delighted, because there isn't a boss in the world that isn't impressed by, someone who wants to, do better, who wants to make the responsibility of a management a little lighter. And, once when your boss give you the advice, or, provide you on some improvements, implement it, and follow up with your boss on what you're doing. So those are my 2 advices if you're seeking, or whether if you're in your career already.
Wonderful. That's so good. And absolutely, I totally agree. I don't think that I tell folks, do not wait until evaluation period to, figure out, oh, how can I improve? How can I develop? You had all this time, access to your boss. And so definitely start thinking about what you're learning, what you accomplish, and the gaps in your skills, and open that conversation. If you can tell your boss that you can help them with all their stuff that they're stuck on, you just help alleviate that stress for them, and they can already start seeing your skills come in place. So absolutely, that's so good. And folks, if you have any questions for Manlia, please go ahead and pop them in. I'm going to quickly jump over here. Linda says, beautiful. I feel like you're speaking to me, giving my inner child the permission to breathe. Wonderful. And if folks don't know, next Wednesday, we are meeting with Linda. Linda's going to talk about her career in teaching as well. So absolutely. We're down to the last 2 minutes here, folks. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to hang out with me, Manlia, learning about what a librarian actually does, right? From the get-go, oftentimes the perception of it, like, oh, you're behind the desk, and you really broke it down like, hey, we're not just there behind the desk. We're doing a multitude of things, from administration, teaching, guidance, communicating with faculty, essentially helping people understand how to utilize virtual tools nowadays to access information that's legitimate and not just any Wikipedia, or Google search out there. And that's so valuable. Whether you are, again, writing a paper, doing a research, and the skills behind that, the tools, the formal training, really provided the opportunities to do that. So thank you so much, Manlia. Really appreciate your energy, your enthusiasm, and how you became a librarian. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, folks.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And for anyone who's watching or coming back later to rewatch our live interview, if you have an interest in pursuing library science, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I forgot to share, Eva, that I actually have 2 other colleagues who are also Hmong working in the library with me too, and that's unusual to find. Is
that's very
3
unusual.
librarians,
Yeah.
having 3 librarians working at the same community college. And so it's just so amazing that I'm, absolutely blessed by, the number of Hmong librarians, and, just to be able to work in a community of, wonderful colleagues and a boss who really understand, who really advocate for, our library as well too. And so for anyone who's watching, who is thinking of pursuing, library information science, feel free to reach out to me. Again, I have, my colleagues as well too, and we're, speaking of just me, where I'm more than happy to, provide any insights, advice as well too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So folks, again, take that offer if you're interested in becoming a librarian, right? Learn about the tools, the tricks, get the behind the and get the raw information. So that way it informs you to make a better decision about, hey, is this a career path that might be possible for you? If you love learning, you love teaching the tools, this might be something for you. All right. Thank you all so much, everyone. Really appreciate we're with the end of here. But again, we'll catch us again on Wednesday. We'll do another one with Linda. And good night, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. And don't forget to follow on all social media platforms. All right, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.